My name's Hara Davis, and I would like to introduce you to my 3 study aid booklets. I designed these especially for people who prefer a more visual way of learning. They're all about 50 pages each and in full colour. I'm going to show you a few pages of each of them to give you an idea of the contents. So let's start with the first one, the study aids. This is a visual summary of the book in the same order as the book. So we start with part 1. And the first page is a description of God and deity. In the book, the Divine Counselor says that in all efforts to enlarge and spiritualize the human concept of God, we are tremendously handicapped by the limited capacity of the human mind. Well, page 1 is my attempt to portray God and deity and how all the aspects of God relate to each other. Then the next page is a description of the infinite Trinity. And then we have a page on space respiration and how that works. That's taken from paper 11. Now, I love maps, and this study aid contains maps of every part of the grand universe that we pass through as we move from here to paradise. And this one on the left is an example of the grand universe. And on the right, the paradise system, showing all the worlds that surround paradise. I also have pages in this section of all the angels and higher beings in the central universe. Then we move on to part 2, which is the local universe. And we have a map of Salvington, our local universe headquarters, where we pass through all 490 spheres, the first one being the Melchizedek University worlds. I give a brief description of what happens in all those stages that we pass through. Then I made a family tree of local universe personalities created by our creator son Michael and the daughter Spirit. I always find this is quite useful to refer to when we look at personalities in the local universe. Then I have a page on the seraphic hosts of the local universe, including our guardians of destiny. And on the right is a map of Edentia, our constellation headquarters. And this is where we master socialization as we live with the Univitatia, who are the permanent citizens of this realm. Then I have a page on how our local system is administered, and a map of Jerusalem, our local system headquarters, and the mansion worlds where we personalize after death. I've also done a summary of what we do on all these spheres and how we visit, which spheres we can visit from each of the mansion worlds. Then we move on to part 3, which is the history of Urantia. And I use timelines a lot here to, for example, on the left, the history of Nevadon, our local universe, and all the events occurring from 1,000 billion years ago, top right, down to the bottom, Michael's bestowals on the bottom right. Then there are a couple of pages on the origins of life using timelines. Before we get to the evolution of mortals, which is shown here on the right. This is a timeline from 1 million years ago at the top, when lemurs appear walking on hind legs, down to the 15th century AD at the bottom, when Sikhism developed. On the left of the timeline, we have what happened on Urantia, and on the right of the timeline, what happened on higher spheres, such as the secondary midwayers. First of all, the life carriers coming and all five of the epochal revelations, and a little section on the secondary midways as well. Then I talk about the Lucifer rebellion and how it unfolded, and some pages on the Adam and Eve default. There's another one on the second garden, and the Melchizedek sojourn on the planet as well. And I also have a page on thought adjusters. Then we come to part 4, the life and teachings of Jesus, starting with his early life, the main events of what happened each year from the age of 1 to 16, including a little section on all his brothers and sisters. Then on the right, the same layout for his early manhood from the age of 17 to 20. Then I've done a map of the tour of his tour of the Mediterranean, and a little bit about what happened at each place they stopped at. I have a page on the baptism as well, and here is a page showing all the apostles and what happened to them all after Jesus' death. I have pages on the public work shown here, and there's another one on his last year and the Last Supper before coming to the crucifixion, which is another timeline, starting at the bottom, going upwards to the crucifixion. And finally, I have 2 pages on the there's a page on the resurrection first of all, then I have 2 pages on the post-resurrection appearances of Jesus, and finish with a map of Palestine at the time of Christ. So that's the study aid booklet. Let's move on to so the workbook is ideas and exercises on how to work on ourselves to make us better people, because all Urantia book readers will tell you how reading the book has changed our lives. We have a new way of looking at life. We can see the bigger picture. Our faith is strengthened. We feel more secure, more able to cope with life's problems. We come to know God and Jesus more as friends. We're no longer afraid of death. But how much does knowledge of the Urantia book change our personality? Are we better people having read the book? Can we relate to others in a kinder way? Are we better parents, more loving partners? Are we more honest, reliable, trustworthy, loyal? Do we display more of the qualities of Jesus, the fruits of the Spirit? Are we progressing from the human to the divine? So this workbook is especially for people who want to put spiritual values into practice in their lives. And I believe we have a responsibility to ourselves and to our thought adjusters and our guardians of destiny, but most of all to ourselves and to those who we come in contact with, to be the best we can be. So together with quotes from the book and my own suggestions and exercises, I've put together this workbook to help us to be more aware of our shortcomings and to actually do something about it. So let's have a look. You can see the contents there. I don't know whether you can read them, but I've done a page on all of the fruits of, 1 page on each of the fruits of the Spirit, and with some ideas of how to cultivate and nurture those qualities in ourselves. And we start off by looking at the Jesus personality. These are quotes from the book, which give us a really amazing overview of a perfectly unified personality, such as that Jesus had. Then I've done a page on how much we can be like him, and these are all the qualities so perfectly displayed in his life on Urantia. And one exercise is to choose one of those qualities and to work on it for a day or for a week, and then choose another one. Here are two examples of fruits of the Spirit, one on fairness and one on joy, and some ideas of how to develop and nurture those qualities. I also have a page on marriage and how to make your marriage last, as shown here, and how to be a great parent. But also I have pages on education, learning to trust God, how to pray. There are also pages on worship, service, wisdom, peace, the Beatitudes, the teaching at Tyre, which is all about character development and worldly success, which is very useful. Here is my page on the Golden Rule and the Art of Living, wonderful sections of the book where we meet Rhodan of Alexandria. Also shown here on the right is a page on war and peace with my research about how many people have actually died in military conflicts recently. I have a paper on the controversial subject of genetic progress and another on human rights. So that's an example of the contents of the workbook. So let's come on to the third booklet, my Urantia Ascender's Handbook. This is where I portray our journey from Urantia to paradise, section by section. Shown here on the right, all on one page, with Urantia at the bottom and the circles of Havona and paradise at the top, and all the systems that we go through to get there. So I have a few pages first on general things like mind development, how we progress from a very messy creature mind at the bottom up through various stages through fusion to our true spirit nature, which we achieve on paradise. And there's also a page on the 7 psychic circles that we progress through from 7 inwards to number 1. I go on to look at death and repersonalization on the mansion worlds of Jerusalem. And there's a page on what happens if we don't go straight to the mansion worlds and become sleeping survivors. I do have papers on Mansion World 1 and another on Urantia Companions. But here is a page as an example on the left of Mansion Worlds 2 to 7, before we get Residence on Jerusalem on the right. There are a few pages on life on Jerusalem, where we live, who we meet, and what we do there in the Melchizedek schools. At some stage during the Mansion Worlds, we fuse with our adjusters, and here's a page on that. Then we move to Urantia, the capital of our constellation, and I have pages on the 70 Urantia training worlds that we pass through, on the Univitatia, the permanent citizens, and the celestial artisans, who are the master artists of the grand universe. But they work mainly, their main realm of activity is in the world surrounding Urantia, and we come into contact with them quite a lot here. After that, we graduate to Salvington, the capital of our local universe and the headquarters of Michael of Nebadon. So this is a page about all the body changes we go through, the transport that we use, time and language, and other things that we experience on the brink of becoming spirits. We have to study at the 490 spheres surrounding Salvington, and this is known as the Melchizedek University, and I have a few pages on the education system there. Before we move on to the super-universe spheres, Ensa, the capital of the minor sector, Splandon, the capital of the major sector, before residing on Uversa, the headquartered world of Orvonton, our super universe. And I have a couple of pages on that. Then several pages on the billion worlds of Havona, what we encounter and learn there as on these perfect worlds before our graduation to paradise. On the left here is a description of the Isle of Paradise, what we experience here as children of eternity. There's a page on primary supernephem and becoming finalitas, which is shown here on the right. There are more pages on the core of the finality, and the last page which is on trinitization and finality destiny, which the writers of the Revelation say they don't know anything about, but they managed to write quite a lot about it. So that is a summary of my 3 study aids. If you're interested in them, they're all available on Amazon. And if you have any questions, please contact me on this email address, horrordavis7@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening.